Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the Gospel of Mark. We're in Mark chapter 6. Today we start reading at verse 17. Now, in yesterday's session, we saw that Herod had become concerned about Jesus. He's heard reports about Jesus' expanding ministry. And Herod is afraid that Jesus is John the Baptist back from the grave. For Herod, we're told, had executed John. And now he's afraid John has somehow come back from the dead in the person of Jesus. Now, we haven't seen John the Baptist since chapter 1 when he baptized Jesus and Jesus' ministry began. And we were told at that point he was put into prison. And now we realize, of course, that Herod had him killed. But why did Herod have him executed? Why did he have him put to death after placing him in prison? Well, Mark tells us that story now. So we start at verse 17 of chapter 6. Herod himself had given the orders to have John arrested. He had him bound and placed in prison. He did this because of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, whom he had married. For John had said to Herod, "It is not lawful for you to have your brother's wife." So Herodias nursed a grudge against John. She wanted to kill him, but she was not able to, because Herod was afraid of John. He protected him, knowing him to be a righteous and a holy man. When Herod heard John, he was puzzled, but he liked to listen to him. So Herod had placed John under arrest because John had condemned his action, Herod's action that is, in marrying Herodias. Herodias had been the wife of Herod's brother Philip, and Herod had essentially stolen her away and married her himself. And John had condemned this action as wrong. And it is wrong, obviously. It's a violation of the law of God. So Herod arrests John, puts him in prison, but he does not intend to execute him. It says he's afraid of him. This is sort of a reflection of the Old Testament where the prophet of God must not be harmed. And most Israelite kings throughout the Old Testament times, even when they opposed the prophets, would not seek to harm them because they were the men of God. And Herod seems to have a little bit of this feeling. He's not a man of God himself. He doesn't care, but he does respect the role of the prophet. He recognizes John as in the prophetic tradition. So, though he arrested him, he does not intend to execute him. But Herodias, his wife, has no such reservations. She wants him dead. She wants John dead. And so she's looking for a way to convince her husband to have him executed. But how? How? The opportunity presents itself at Herod's birthday celebration. Finally, an opportunity came. It was on his birthday, and Herod gave a banquet for his high officials, military commanders, all the leading men of Galilee. When the daughter of Herodias came and danced, she pleased Herod and his dinner guests. So the king, that is Herod, said to the girl, "Ask me for anything you want. I'll give it to you." He promised her with an oath, "Whatever you ask, I'll give you up to half my kingdom." Rather audacious comment and crazy promise he made to her that he'd give her whatever she wanted. I have a feeling he was probably pretty well intoxicated and not thinking what he was doing, and he made this rash oath. Now the girl goes out and says to her mother, "What should I ask for?" And her mother, Herodias, realizes there's an opportunity here. Ask for the head of John the Baptist. So at once the girl hurries in to the king with the request, "I want you to give me right now the head of John the Baptist on a platter." Now the king was greatly distressed, but because of his oath and his dinner guest, he did not want to refuse her. So he immediately sent an executioner with orders to bring back the head of John. The man went, beheaded John in the prison, brought back his head on a platter, and presented it to the girl, who gave it to her mother. On hearing of this, John's disciples came. They took his body and placed it in a tomb. It's a tragic ending to the life of John the Baptist on this completely evil king, who, even though he recognized John as a prophet and did not wish to harm him, felt like that's a line he should not cross. Yet he does so because of his stepdaughter's request. He was so pleased with her dance, and in his intoxicated state, he made that rash promise, and he goes through with it. So John's life has come to an end. John, who was the one who prepared the way, for the coming of the Messiah who is now here. You know, sometimes when we fulfill the mission of God, there's a cost involved, and there was certainly for John. It kind of reminds us that Jesus would later tell his disciples, you know, if you follow me, and sometimes there's a cross involved. You have to take up your cross and follow. We have to understand that. John the Baptist understood it. He was willing to give his life, if necessary, for the sake of the kingdom of God. And we should be willing to pay whatever costs are necessary as we follow Jesus. All right, in tomorrow's session, we're back to the story of the apostles. What happens when they return from their mission of preaching the news of Jesus, going out 2 by 2? We'll start looking at that tomorrow in verse 30 of chapter 6.